Imagine a fighter so unconventional, so ahead of its time, that it baffled and terrified the most elite pilots of the Luftwaffe. We're diving deep into the legend of the P-38 Lightning, the twin-engine nightmare that twisted German air superiority on its head. Discover the secrets behind its unparalleled success and why it became the bogeyman for Axis powers. November 8, 1942, Algiers to Bizerte, 12th Air Force, 1st Fighter Group, 14th Fighter Group, commanded by Major General James H. Doolittle. Dawn climbs over the African coast, and the twin booms cut a new line across the sky. Silver shapes with long legs and hard shoulders. Two engines humming in a braided note. To many German eyes, they look like heavy fighters that will turn slow and die slower. A mistake forms at first sight, and it will cost blood. On the ground, fuel trucks cough. Crews snap the last cowl fasteners. Prop arcs blur. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning rolls light over dirt and steel matting twin Allison V-1710 seconds spooling into a clean, rising whine. A nose packed with cannon and machine guns. No propeller disc in the way. Everything concentrates forward. The air is thin with dust and salt. The brief is simple and unforgiving. Find the enemy over the convoy lanes and the desert roads. Escort the mediums. Stay high. Strike once. Climb away. North across the water, German controllers feed vectors to fighters that have ruled this air for months. Rotte and Schwarm form up. The first P-38 seconds they have studied on silhouettes, not in knife-range reality. There is talk that twin engines mean drag, that twin tails mean fragility, that an American fighter that big must bleed energy in turns and stalls. Then the merge comes, a boom and a streak. The P-38 does not turn flat. It carves a shallow slash, drops the nose, and dives clean through its own wake. The Luftwaffe pilots chase and discover that the Lightning keeps breathing at altitudes where the air grows mean. This is the design that looks wrong on paper until the numbers speak. Twin booms to clean the airflow, a central nacelle to hold pilot guns and nose gear. Turbo-superchargers riding the Allisons so the engines hold power high where contrails are born. Counter-rotating propellers cancel torque and pull the nose straight in, climb and dive. A long wing that rides thin air without drama until compressibility shows its teeth. In early dives, the air stacks up, controls stiffen, speed trembles past the safe line. Crews and test pilots answer with new placards, new discipline, and later with dive recovery flaps. Lessons written in seconds and saved in metal. The first weeks in North Africa are hard. Heat bakes engines, sand eats bearings, tactics must be made on contact. But the range is a weapon all its own. With drop tanks hung under the wings, the Lightning escorts bombers beyond the normal reach of single-engine cover. It loiters where ambushes form. It picks its height, not the other way around. Climb rate gives the opening choice. Dive speed gives the closing word. The fight becomes geometry altitude, converted to angles, angles converted to bursts. German units adjust. Head-on passes to blunt the P-38's nose battery. Vertical rolls to shake it off the tail. Drag it low, where a Bf-109 or an FW-190 can scissor tight and fire from a climbing spiral. Some of these counters draw blood, many do not. The Lightning does not accept the fight it does not want. It breaks away on two engines, absorbs a few holes, and returns still fast, still climbing, still cold. Crews learn to keep it high and clean, to avoid flat turns, to play the throttle split and rudder to roll the big span faster than it looks able to roll. By winter, the reputation begins to itch at the German briefings. Reports speak of escorts arriving sooner than expected and staying longer than seems possible. Reports speak of dives that do not end where the script says they should end. Reports speak of a silhouette that looks ungainly until it is a streak in the gunsight and then a contrail speck rising out of reach. Not a miracle machine, not a war winner by itself, but a system that when flown to its lines shifts the risk up where the bombers live. In a coastal sky bruised with weather, a Lightning section runs top cover for mediums crossing a seam of whitecaps. The radio is busy but clipped, contact high left. The leader noses down 3 degrees, not more, and the airspeed rises without fuss. A German pair drops on the formation. The Lightning leader breaks shallow to draw them through, then pulls a measured quarter loop, not a showy pull, a number built from practice. The nose steadies. The guns speak in one straight voice from the centerline. One attacker flashes through a cone of tracers and slips away. The other banks hard right and dives, but the twin engines pull the P-38 back to altitude before the next threat arrives. The mediums keep their course. The sea keeps its secrets. Word spreads along fighter fields from Tunisia to Sicily to southern Italy. The big American twin is not a bloated target after all. It is a long-range knife. It chooses the entrance and the exit. It punishes mistakes at height. Pilots adjust their tone. They do not write hymns. They write cautions. Respect its dive. Respect its climb. Do not be late. Night reaches over the airfield. The crews wipe oil from cowl seams and check turbo lines by lamplight. Tomorrow there will be another escort, another hunt, another set of numbers to fly. The Lightning waits on its gear, tense and still. Not a myth, not a monster. A design that forces the enemy to spend more time looking up, more time calculating, more time bleeding energy where it matters. The lesson is simple and sharp. Underestimate the twin engines, and you will learn why they were there. Burbank Lockheed Plant 1937 to 1943. Sheet metal flashes under skylights. Ribs, spars, jigs. A chalk line runs the length of a new idea that refuses to fit a single fuselage. Hall Hibbard sets the frame. Clarence Kelly Johnson walks the catwalks with a notebook and a stare that does not blink. The brief from the United States Army Air Corps is severe. A high-altitude interceptor with climb like a grappling hook and range far beyond familiar patterns. One engine will not answer the climb and the range at the same time. Two engines will. The layout looks audacious because it is clean. Twin booms carry engines, radiators, and gear. A central nacelle carries pilot oxygen radio and all the guns. No wing guns to drift. No cowl guns to converge and miss. One axis. One burst. The Allisons are 1,710 seconds, with turbo-superchargers breathing thin air through long ducts and coolers that must live inside sleek lines. Propellers spin in opposite directions to wash away torque and P-factor. The wing is large and laminar enough to carry fuel and still pull a climb without drama. Every choice is a trade that points at altitude and distance. First flight, January 27, 1939. The XP-38 lifts over March Field and traces a hard pencil line against winter haze. Days later, a coast-to-coast dash ends on a cold runway at Mitchell Field after a long glide forced by icing and lost power. The airframe lies crumpled, but the numbers from the run speak. The bones of speed are there. The test cards do not flatter. Compressibility appears like a trapdoor at the bottom of a steep dive. Control forces rise. The nose tucks. Crews and engineers push back with placards, revised dive profiles, and later dive recovery flaps that will arrive on late J&L blocks. Doctrine grows beside metallurgy. Fly the Lightning with discipline, and the sky will open. Fly it like a single-engine dogfighter at low level, and you will pay. War redraws the schedule. Production versions march E, F, G, H, J, L, each a tune, not a reinvention. Intercoolers move, radiators move. Cooling doors gain smarter geometry. Armament stays simple and brutal in the nose. One 20mm cannon and 450 caliber machine guns in many marks with no harmonization guesswork. Turbo plumbing becomes sturdier. Ignition systems accept desert dust, island humidity, Italian winter. Pilots learn to use throttle, split and rudder to swing the broad wings faster than the span suggests. Maintenance crews build rituals around turbo checks, cowl flap positions, and coolant temperatures. The airplane answers their care by bringing men home on one engine with a steady, unsurprised pull. Doctrine seals the idea. Long-range escort for medium bombers in North Africa. Interdiction along roads that carry fuel and ammunition to the Tunisian front. High cover over convoys that feed the slog up the Italian peninsula. Later in the Pacific Range becomes a weapon with no near rival. 2 engines, 2 generators. Redundancy is not romance, it is survival when the nearest strip is a thin line on a jungle coast. The same nose battery that shears open a twin-engine bomber at 500 yards will also rake a submarine chaser, a radio hut, or a column on a coral road. The airplane becomes a toolkit that flies. German assessments begin with underestimation because the silhouette reads heavy fighter. The counters for heavy fighters seem obvious. Cut under the turn, force low-altitude scissors, use vertical rolls to pull the opponent into a stall margin. But the Lightning refuses the frame. It does not commit to flat turns if flown to brief. It chooses energy fights. It dives with authority. It climbs away on two streams of power that do not sag at height. When compressors keep the manifold pressure honest above 20,000 feet, the rules change. A Bf-109 can chase a mistake. It struggles to erase a sound, patient climb that begins with 1,000 extra feet and ends with a firing solution from above. Not every theatre is kind. The European cold brings carburetor and turbo quirks that demand exact hands. Early turbos complain when throttles are yanked. The broad wing can bite in a hard flat pull near the stall. A P-38 flown against type will lose to a compact single that lives for low-altitude scissors. Crews write checklists that are not ink, but procedure burned into muscle. Keep it high. Keep it fast. Convert height to speed, speed to angles, angles to a short burst. Break away clean. Climb. Reset. The airplane rewards the pilot who flies the numbers. Design echoes into tactics that become testimony. Intercepts flown by 1st Fighter Group and 14th Fighter Group over the Mediterranean in 1942 and 1943. Long escort arcs to support 12th Air Force attacks into Sicily. Hunter-killer sorties with 82D Fighter Group stalking road nets near Naples. In these frames, the twin engines are not weight. They are authority. They allow a heavy dive that does not steal as much altitude on recovery. They allow a turn at partial power on one side, with rudder metered to hold the sight steady. They allow a wounded airplane to leave a fight without asking for a miracle. Back in Burbank, the line never stops. Fuselage pods on pallets, booms in fixtures. Men and women who will never see Tunisia or New Georgia rivet wire and safety tie a machine that exists to choose its fight. The myth never appears on the drawings. The advantage does. It is math in aluminum. It is airflow over twin tails that stay effective when the nose drops on a fast line. It is ammunition that meets the target where the sight says it will meet. It is a pilot who trusts the brief, and the brief that trusts the design. The legend does not arrive with a parade. It arrives when the enemy adjusts his opening plan because a certain twin has been reported at altitude. It arrives when bomber crews breathe easier at the far leg of a mission because two contrails above them never waver. It arrives when a damaged Lightning clears a ridge on one engine with a slow, implacable climb that a single could not have managed. Not a miracle, not a talisman. A system that makes error expensive for those who misread it. High air, thin light, contrails like chalk marks. The Lightning waits above the lane of bombers, and the Hunter becomes geometry. Pick the height, keep the spacing. Nose down 2 degrees, not more. The speed comes on clean. Guns fixed in the nose. No convergence guesswork. One burst, one axis. Then climb away on twin streams of power and leave only the echo of turbulence behind. Crews teach their hands to fly numbers, not nerves. Convert altitude into angles. Never accept a flat turn near the stall. Split throttles and feed rudder for a snap of roll the span does not advertise. If the enemy drags the fight low, do not chase pride, brake, extend, reset. The Lightning makes distance with authority because two engines do not sag at height when the turbos hold manifold pressure honest. That is the discipline. The dive is a blade. Early marks meet compressibility like a trapdoor at the bottom of the arc. The nose tucks, the controls stiffen, the air turns glassy and fast. Pilots learn new entries, new recovery cues, new limits. Then the J and L blocks bring dive recovery flaps and the trapdoor narrows. Now the Lightning can knife down, hold sight picture a heartbeat longer, and pull out with less altitude burned. It is not magic. It is engineering that converts a hazard into a timed option. Use it within the card. Survive. Kill. Climb. The edge at altitude is cruel. Above 20,000 feet, the air favors the turbocharged Allisons. A Bf-109 can punish a mistake. It struggles to erase a patient climb that starts 1,000 feet higher and arrives from above with closure already solved. The Lightning chooses vertical terms. It refuses scissor traps. It dives through the merge levels just enough to steady the pipper and speaks with a nose of cannon and 50 caliber in one straight voice. A short burst. Then cold sky again. Mediterranean lanes. Winter and spring of 1943. Escorts for mediums over Tunisia, Sicily, and up the Italian boot, William J. Dixie Sloan of the 82D Fighter Group learns the rhythm: arrive first, leave last, spend energy only on terms you choose. By mid-year, he carries a dozen victories all against the Luftwaffe, not a headline machine. A working tool flown by men who memorize altitudes, engine settings, and distances like scripture. The German reaction hardens from swagger into caution. Respect the dive. Respect the climb. Do not be late. Over the Aegean, the Lightning shows a blunt form of terror. October 9, 1943, a Royal Navy force needs cover near Rhodes. A swarm of Stukas presses in. Major William Leverette rolls his P-38G and goes to work with clinical speed. 7 downed dive bombers credited in one mission. The lesson for any escort commander is simple. Keep the altitude. Cut the approach lanes. Use the straight-shooting nose battery. When the enemy must dive to attack ships, the Lightning punishes that commitment with ruthless geometry. Ace against ace comes in a cold European spring. May 11, 1944, Eastern Belgium, to the Eifel. Oberst Walter Oso, a top Luftwaffe scorer, lifts with Jagdgeschwader 1 to meet a great American raid. P-38 seconds of the 428th Fighter Squadron, 474th Fighter Group, drop from high cover, and the fight unwinds from stratosphere to treetops. 20 minutes of turns and bursts. Oso defends, hard takes hits, tries to nurse a wounded Gustav toward a field. A final burst reaches the cockpit. He is down near Saint-Vith. Sources differ on which American pilot fired the fatal rounds. Lieutenant James Doyle is often cited, but the Corps is not in dispute. A renowned German ace falls after a running fight with Lightnings. The twin-boom silhouette that once looked slow and soft has just ended a legend's day. German reports tell another piece of the picture. Claims of multiple P-38 seconds shot down near Athens one day. Escort logs showing no. Lightning lost on that run. Overclaim is not unique to any side in this war, but it sketches the confusion the P-38 could impose when it chose height, speed, and exit. A formation appears where it should not. It dives faster than expected. It is gone before the last tracer fades. The narrative inside enemy briefings shifts from easy counters to warnings about vertical entry and ruthless disengagement. The pattern repeats across theaters. In the Mediterranean, the 82D Fighter Group and its sister units stack kills in the air and strikes on rail and road. They learn to rake locomotive lines, coastal convoys, and dispersal strips with that concentrated nose battery. They learn to bring hurt home even when weather flak and fuel try to break the rhythm. The numbers are not romance. Hundreds of aircraft destroyed in the air by the group across the campaign. 3 distinguished unit citations. A reputation built on repetition rather than myth. The method stays spare. Arrive high. Keep the sun honest. Dive only when the angle is solved. Fire short. Climb now. Do not linger. If dragged low, refuse. Extend on 2 engines, then spiral back to the regime where the Lightning writes the rules. The airplane rewards the pilot, who treats every turn like a transaction. The airplane punishes the one who trades too much altitude for too little angle. The enemy learns the same lesson from the other side of the gunsight. So the terror in the skies is not noise or bravado. It is the quiet certainty that somewhere up sun a twin-boom fighter is drawing a chalk line with its contrail counting seconds and waiting to fall. When it falls with math. When it leaves with power. The space between those 2 acts is where men either live or burn. Briefing hut, map pins, grease pencil arcs over the Sicilian Straits and the Tunisian coast. Jagdgeschwader 27 and Jagdgeschwader 53 rotate through the board, while staff officers speak in clipped notes about altitude blocks and fuel states. A silhouette sheet lies on the table, twin booms, central nacelle, broad span, der Gabelschwanz Teufel, the fork-tailed devil. At first the name is a joke, then the joke wears off. Pilots return with the same sentences in different orders. It dives faster than expected. It climbs longer than expected. It will not stay and wrestle. It will not chase pride into a corner. It appears above the bombers, falls like a hammer, fires a short burst and leaves. The usual counters are rehearsed. Meet it head-on to blunt the centerline guns. Drag it down into a flat, low scissors, where a Bf-109 can bite with a tighter turn and a lighter wing. Force the merge away from the vertical. Use the sun. Then the fights show that the counters only work when the Lightning breaks its own brief. When it keeps to altitude and discipline, it sets the terms. Tunisia, in early 1943, writes the first hard lessons. Rotte climbed to meet a medium bomber stream. A cover of P-38 seconds hangs high and quiet. The German leader tries the standard vertical roll to force an overshoot. The Lightning does not follow. It flashes past the merge, steadies a fraction of a second, and speaks from its nose. The Gustav yaws under the clipped cone of tracers and survives, but the wingman does not. Debrief that evening is cool. Respect the dive. Do not follow it downhill. If it climbs, refuse the chase, unless you already own the height. Fuel is a leash. Do not waste it on the wrong rope. Sicily sharpens the warnings. Escorts arrive early and leave late on days when the weather suggests they should have turned back. Twin engines and drop tanks stretch the problem. The P-38 will still be there when a second vector arrives from a ground station that thought the sky had cleared. Pilots begin to plan for a second guard even after the plot looks empty. Caution becomes habit. A habit costs time. Time costs chances. Rhodes in October 1943 changes tone to alarm. Dive bombers press a naval target and find the top cover not where they expected it. A Lightning section angles down in measured steps, cuts the approach lanes, and turns a Stuka pattern into wreckage in minutes. The story travels across mess halls and forward strips. Do not let the P-38 hang above a formation. Break it early or break away. The math is unforgiving once it owns the height. On the Western Front in spring 1944, the emblem on the tail may change, but the feeling repeats. Eastern Belgium to the Eiffel. A renowned leader lifts to meet a deep American raid. The fight runs from contrail height down to hedgerows. P-38 seconds of a high-cover squadron keep showing up at the worst moments each time with enough energy to make a single, clean attack. When the last climb fails and a Gustav staggers toward a field, the end is a short final line of tracers. The debrief that never happens would have said the same thing. The twin-boom fighter forced an energy fight and never let go of the vertical. German controllers adjust their rhythms. Vectors are stacked with more caution when contrails betray a high escort. Warnings go out to avoid protracted climbs after a P-38 that has just finished a pass. Emphasis falls on ambush from below, and from the sun on short bursts at the merge, rather than long chases. Propaganda tries a different tack. Reports inflate losses inflicted when an engagement is confused by altitude changes and disappearing contrails. Pilots in the field are not fooled. Overclaim is a common fog on all sides. The shape of the truth remains. The twin-engine American fighter punishes delay and indecision. Counter-tactics do find narrow windows. In low air with tight terrain, a Bf-109 or an FW-190 can force the Lightning into turns it does not want. A P-38 flown against numbers can be made to bleed, speed, and show a larger target. The broad wing can bite if hauled too hard near the stall. Early marks meet compressibility in steep dives, and can be trapped if the pilot lacks altitude or discipline. These are real edges. They are narrow. They require the German pilot to control time and height from the first minute. Against a disciplined Lightning section, that control is rare. Maintenance officers write their own grudging notes. The American twin seems to take damage and still climb out. 2 engines mean 2 chances to leave a bad place. 2 generators keep radios and instruments steady when a single-engine opponent might already be nursing a failure state. Complaints about apparent invulnerability are dismissed in the calm language of probability. It is not invulnerable. It is organized against loss in a way that changes risk calculus at the edge of a fight. Psychology spreads like weather. Crews who once sought the twin tail for glory now mark their altimeter more carefully when it is reported above the formation. Heads tilt up more often at the rendezvous altitudes. A little more fuel is burned in guarded climbs. The timing of a turn is checked twice. The tone inside the hut turns from mockery into professional respect edged with unease. It is not fear of a myth. It is respect for a tool that has been taught to its work. By late 1943 in the Mediterranean and into 1944 in the West, the phrase becomes common in debriefs. The twin-engine American is not to be taken lightly at height. Break its plan early or do not engage. If the merge comes on its terms, accept that disengagement may be the only rational choice. The pilots nod. They will try again tomorrow. The map pins move. The grease pencil arcs are redrawn. The sky will judge. They leave the hut with new cautions and old hopes, head-on passes, low traps, baited dives. Tomorrow they will try them all, and the sky will judge. Dawn again, maps redrawn, cautions memorized, yet the arithmetic does not change. Head-on passes promise certainty, then dissolve in the straight, merciless voice of centerline guns. Low traps look clever, then fail when twin power turns extension into safety and safety into height. Compressibility once tempts a kill, then dive recovery flaps and drilled entries close the window to a heartbeat. Tricks keep arriving. The numbers keep erasing them. The P-38 survives because it refuses the fight it does not want. That is the core. Two engines turn withdrawal into a maneuver, not a prayer. Two turbocharged streams hold power where the air is thin and mean. Range bends the map until missions once labeled unreachable now carry escorts to the far turn and back. Redundancy drains fear from a damaged minute. Discipline turns design into timing. Timing turns timing into kills, measured in short, unsentimental bursts. German counter-tactics never vanish. They tighten. They sharpen. They find narrow weather, tight terrain, sudden cloud, a blind quarter at the wrong second. In those slivers any machine bleeds. The Lightning bleeds too when hauled low and flat and late. But slivers are not doctrine. Doctrine is what still works when the sky is messy, fuel is tight, and a second vector arrives from the wrong direction. Doctrine is altitude held like money in a closed fist. Doctrine is one burst, then gone. The enemy changes tone long before it admits defeat. Briefings add cautions. Controllers hedge their climbs. Pilots mark the sun more often, the clock more carefully. They speak of the fork-tailed devil without laughter now. Not myth, not talisman. A machine that flown to its card writes the terms of entry and exit. Break its plan early or do not engage. If it owns the vertical, disengage clean. Try again tomorrow. That phrase, try again tomorrow, is the quiet note of respect. Crews on the ground write their own verdict with rags and safety wire. Turbo checks, cowl door discipline, coolant ritual, ignition hygiene. These are not stories. These are habits that trade time for lives. The airplane pays back those habits in long climbs on one engine, in steady radios on two generators, in landings that look ugly and end with men stepping down into dust instead of smoke. In every theatre across the long arc of the war, that pattern repeats. Not glory, procedure. Not miracles, margins. The pilots who fly it keep their world small and exact. Altitude into angles, angles into a held pipper, fire short. Do not chase pride. Climb, reset. The enemy learns the same rhythm from the other side, written in negative space, a contrail line that should not be there, a dive that lasts a breath too long, a twin silhouette already climbing away while fuel needles sink. Confidence shifts, initiative shifts. The map pins move under a weight that looks like chance and is actually system. And the fear that the title promised the nightmare realized is not loud. It is the knowledge that somewhere above the convoy lane or the bomber stream a twin-boom fighter is watching the clock and the sun, waiting for the moment when math becomes a weapon. It falls. It speaks once. It leaves. The space between those three acts is where men either live or burn. No duel sung, no myth crowned, only the cool completion of a plan. Years later, the legacy reads the same. Air forces remember that range is a tactic, that redundancy is not luxury, that concentrated fire where the sight points matters more than rhetoric about turning circles. That discipline inside the cockpit and ritual outside it is design made human. The Lightning does not claim that it changed the war. It claims something harder to dismiss. It forced a professional enemy to respect the vertical, to pay for delay, to waste fewer words and more care. So, the end lands quiet. Dawn again. A line of aluminum and rivets and tired oil stands on its gear, pointed at another map with another pencil arc. Crews move, pilots brief, the sky will judge. And if the fight comes on the Lightning's terms, the fight will be short, a clean entry, a straight burst, an exit that denies revenge. That is the final lesson. Counters broke because the system held. The twin-engine nightmare was never theatre. It was procedure carried to its edge, and it endured.